Welcome back. It is fair to say this was the worst week yet in Donald Trump's presidency. On Tuesday, we were treated to a remarkable split-screen drama. One Trump confidant, lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, pleaded guilty to 8 counts of financial fraud. Moments later, and 230 miles to the south in suburban Washington, another Trump ally, Paul Manafort, was found guilty on 8 counts of financial crimes of his own. The twin events dominated news coverage and have many asking whether this is a turning point in the Trump presidency. Joining me now is Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona, who does sit on the Senate Judiciary Committee. But of course, Senator, I want to begin with your thoughts on Senator John McCain. You wrote something very lovely in a self-deprecating way. You said you were the other senator in Arizona, and that when you served with John McCain, everybody learned to become the other senator from Arizona. Go talk more.
Well, yes, I was. That was my title, the other senator from Arizona, and I grew to enjoy that and embrace it. But it was like having a big brother who nobody wanted to mess with. So I very much enjoyed serving with John McCain in the Senate and being in the House when he was in the Senate as well. You
know, a lot of people, including myself, are wondering who fills that void. It's not going to be a void that is filled right away. But how does a void like John McCain's get filled? I think you've tried to step up in different ways, trying to reach across the aisle, but not many of your colleagues do that.
I don't know that we'll ever see anybody who is like John McCain. I think he's one of a kind. I think we can certainly try to follow his example in seeing the good in our opponents and recognizing that people may be on the other side of the aisle or have a different philosophy, but they're our friends and they're fellow Americans. I think that would go a long way if we would follow that example from John.
I know that Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, says he plans to introduce legislation to rename a Senate office building. We assume it's the Richard Russell Senate office building, somebody that goes back to the segregationist years in Georgia. I take it that would be a pretty easy vote for a lot of people to cast, to rename that building the McCain Senate office building?
It would be. I hope to be the first Republican co-sponsor. I think that's a fitting tribute. He had his office there during his entire time, including right now, right near my office. And so I think that's a very fitting tribute.
Let me move to the week's events and ask you a question about dealing with the president this way. You're on the Senate Judiciary Committee. The President of the United States was accused of helping to commit a federal crime. Now, he's an unindicted co-conspirator with Michael Cohen. But Charlie Sykes wrote in the New York Times in July that sometime before the midterm elections, Republicans are going to need to show that they are more than just constitutional potted plants. What should the U.S. Congress do now to look into this accusation that the sitting president of the United States was apparently in a court of law directed somebody to commit a federal crime?
Well, first we need to make sure that the Muller investigation is allowed to continue and be completed. We've passed legislation in the Judiciary Committee to that effect. I hope that it's brought up on the floor. Some of the investigation obviously isn't the Muller investigation. It's, I think, the 7th District of New York. That will continue as well. So I think to make sure that there is a separation of powers and Congress assumes its constitutional role, that's the most important thing we can do at this point.
So do you think, though, that means just protecting Mueller or holding some hearings?
No, I think protecting the Mueller investigation. We don't want to get involved in terms of overlapping what's going on there. I think Bob Mueller is moving forward as he should, and that needs to continue. There is a concern that the president has ramped up rhetoric about perhaps firing the Attorney General.
Right.
I hope that doesn't happen. If it does, we'll deal with it at that time.
I am curious if sentiment has changed in the Senate Republican Conference when it comes to Jeff Sessions. I want to play for you Lindsey Graham from last year and Lindsey Graham from last week. Here it is.
If Jeff Sessions is fired, there will be holy hell to pay. The president's entitled to attorney general he has faith in, and I think there will come a time, sooner rather than later, where it will be time to have a new face and a fresh voice at the Department of Justice.
Is it fair to say that Sessions doesn't have the same amount of support in the Senate Republican Conference right now that he did last year?
I don't know. There may be a few isolated voices saying that the president ought to fire him now. I can tell you, as a body, we're saying please don't. He serves at the pleasure of the president. We all know that, but I think it would be a big mistake for the president to fire him now.
What kind of mistake is it? I mean,
it would be
what
very
kind of
difficult.
repercussion? What kind of repercussion do you think there should be if he does this?
Well, the concern obviously is that that would be the first domino to fall. Then what happens with Rod Rosenstein? What happens with Bob Mueller? And I think firing Jeff Sessions would concern us all. That's the first domino. So I frankly think that the president will hold off. He's made these kind of noises before, but then has pulled back.
Before I let you go, there's a primary in Arizona. 3 Republicans vying to replace you in the United States Senate. You care to share with us publicly who you plan to support?
No, I wish them well. It's nice not having to take a position on this.
Do you think your endorsement helps or hurts people in the Republican primary right now?
No, nobody would be asking for it in the Republican primary, I can tell you that. This is very much, and you know, I'm not happy about it, but this is the president's party right now, and I think that we'll be sorry for that in the future, but that's the case right now.
Jeff Flake, I know you have a heavy heart this morning. I know it's not easy to come on here when you've lost such a close friend and a mentor. Thanks for coming on and sharing your thoughts today.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.